Oregon Ducks win the Fiesta Bowl. Bo Nix breaks some Mariota records. The Huskies are in the national title game. Scoot Henderson is picking up steam, and the Oregon State Beavers got shellacked. But there is still some good news on the Beavers front. Welcome to the Oregonian Sports Podcast. I am Aaron Fentress of the Oregonian Oregon Live, along with Brenna Greene. Both of us have jam-packed days today, so we're going to try and rip through this in under an hour and a half. We'll see if we can get it done. But before we get rolling,
Godspeed to us.
Please remember to text JOIN to 503-386-0095 to join our subtext feature. You could have gotten all sorts of texts from myself and Creppy and Bill Orm during the bowl game if you were participating. And of course, even though Oregon football is over with and Oregon State football is over with, there's still this Blazers season that I'll be sending out subtexts about, and I know you'll be jacked up to follow this team as it heads toward a top 5 pick. Anyway, Brenna, what is up? It's been a minute. We took last week off. Last week was a busy week for me. I know it probably was for you, family stuff and holidays and all that kind of stuff. So we kind of took the week off, but we're back. And the most recent thing that's happened that we care about the most is the Ducks and the Fiesta Bowl. So since I just started talking and rambling, open this thing up, why don't you give us your initial impressions of the game and what it meant, if anything?
This is what we expected it to be, and maybe then some. We expected it to be demolishing, but you never know. Okay, is it going to be like a respectable demolishing? No. This was disrespectful isn't the right word. It
could have been a lot worse. They were kind of nice. They were nice. They were nice in the second half.
They were nice. They pulled Bo after drive. Well, really after drive 2. I'm not going to count that final drive. All he did was hand off. So, I honestly thought they should have pulled Bo after the first drive of the third quarter. I said that online. What better? You just connected with your adopted brother on a trick play and have the completion percentage. We're done here. But in my eyes, I was like, there's no, what else do you want? That's the best way of all time to go out. What else do you need? But anyways, they kept going on that one, which it's I can't blame anybody. Yeah. This was just sound. It was a very sound beatdown. There you go. I think that's the best way to put it.
We got bars here on the Oregonian Sports Podcast.
Yeah, well, I try. We both deal in words for a living, so we try to find the correct ones.
Yeah, journalists should be the best rappers when you think about it. Anyway.
Oh, okay. Let's see your skills.
I digress.
Yeah, this was everything we expected it to be, and probably a little bit more. But still a very, very, just a very I don't know. It still felt satisfying in a way, so that was good, I guess, right? Yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
So, what did you think when Liberty came out in the first drive and was just slinging it and running it, and that beautiful touchdown pass on that first score for them? What did you think at that moment? Did any part of you think, uh-oh?
No. Because you want to know who did that too to begin the season? Portland State.
Yep. It happens a lot. Even back in the glory years for Oregon when they were rattling off conference titles and Mariota was playing. There were several games where the huge underdog came out hot, right? Just came out smoking. And when you practice all week, or in this case, several weeks, you're going to run your best stuff. You're going to get that script down, and you should be able to execute that really, really well. And the other team might be a little flat-footed because the game starts, and you execute and you put it together and you score. But it usually doesn't last.
Yeah. So there you go. I wasn't too concerned. It was like, all right, it happened. If we get to 21-0, now I'm a little worried. But we did not breach that whatsoever.
It was 6-3 at the end of the first quarter. Liberty was better.
It was.
So I'm just saying.
Yeah.
No, it was just a matter of waiting for the avalanche to start. It was clear, but I give Liberty credit for coming out, playing well that first quarter, giving it all they have. But then it was just you just tell that
They're
Liberty
outmatched.
came in. I looked up really quickly. Liberty's average recruiting class leading up to this season, the last few years, was like 106, between 86 and 116 or something like that. And Oregon's was between 7 and 16. So the talent level, regardless of who was sitting out for Oregon, was just too much. So so let me ask you this: I made this point, and I'm sure other people did too, before the game, that at the end of the day, because people wonder, does it even matter? Why should they care about beating Liberty? It wasn't about Liberty. It was about becoming Fiesta Bowl champions. Because at the end of the day, when you put that Fiesta Bowl trophy in the trophy case, it's not going to matter who you beat, right? You went to the Fiesta Bowl and you won the game. So Lanning has a Holiday Bowl trophy.
Control.
Right. Lanning has a Holiday Bowl trophy. Lanning has a Fiesta Bowl trophy. So that's better than only having the Holiday Bowl trophy, no matter how you look at it.
We're leveling up.
Yeah, exactly. And so next, you would hope, a conference title maybe, which is going to be a bear to pull off in the Big Ten, and of course trying to contend for a national title. But right now, that's nice. You got those two trophies in the trophy case. So all right, so that's enough about the game.
Moving on quickly. We'll talk about it a little bit
before we evaluate the season and talk about Bo. Everyone was appalled by the Georgia-Florida State, right? Score 63-3. Number 4, Georgia. Number 6, Florida State. Yeah. And yes, Florida State was missing most of its starters who opted out or were injured or what have you. And so I got in a little tit for tat on Twitter about that. And my point to people who were saying they were missing their starters was that doesn't matter to me. The point is they didn't have a quarterback. And the quarterback they had in play, well, one of the quarterbacks entered the transfer portal. Now, he probably would have played, obviously, they were in the playoffs, but the point, he's gone, which means he knows he's not going to be the starter next year. So that tells you just where he is on the totem pole. And then the other kid that stayed couldn't do anything against Georgia. And so that would have been your quarterback, even if he'd been surrounded by better starters, that would have been your quarterback against a playoff caliber team. And he wouldn't have been able to produce enough offense to make the game competitive. And that was the whole point of why the committee did what it did. And the fact, and I'm not saying it would have been 63-3. Okay, so it's 41-17. It's whatever it is, it's not going to be good. They're not going to be able to contend. And Georgia drove that point home. The bigger problem to me is that more teams are going to make the playoffs now, so it's not going to matter quite as much. But moving forward, I think teams should have to declare how many players are playing. You have to sign those players to contracts. They can get paid before you decide the matchups. Because this would have been so much better had Florida State, if we all knew how many players were going to be missing. If Florida State played Liberty, that would have been a much more interesting game. And then Georgia played Oregon. Instead, we got these two mismatches in these two high-profile bowl games. It's just a waste of time for everybody. So, again, moving forward, we're talking about the 13th ranked team not getting in. And how many starters are they going to have? Are you going to match them up against number 14, or should you match them up against someone else because starters aren't going or whatever? But so it may not matter, but that should have been done this year because we just got treated to two horrific football games because the system's broken.
I mean, I can understand how, you just see Georgia, Florida State, and you go, oh, that's sexy.
Yes, exactly.
That's exactly what happened.
Right.
That bowl committee saw that and said, oh, we got that? We got two teams that could have been in the playoffs?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. What a coup for us. But, and I mean, who knows? I mean, Georgia could have been a similar situation as Florida State. There could have been a lot more opt-outs at Georgia than there were.
Right.
So, then that would have been maybe more evenly matched. But that did not occur. And so, yeah, it's tough because, I mean, you're supposed to set up these games. And like I said, I know exactly how this all went down. It's just, that was the mystique of it all. And then, you don't think about, oh, Florida State's going to be pissed and all their players are going to go. You just don't think about it in the moment. You just see the names on a piece of paper and go, ooh, if you're that bowl game. So that's exactly what happened. Sure. People got big eyes and didn't think it all through. And, here we are. Because let's just be frank. Georgia, Florida State is always going to be a prettier girl in the room than Georgia, Oregon. So that's how it happened. That's where we're at. we carry on, and yes, the bowl system is broken. What else is there to say?
Thank God things are changing.
But
the bowl system's still broken, but at least we won't to worry about top tier teams playing in bad games. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yes. I mean, but we did have the Pop-Tart mascot bequeathed to us. So, at least there's something good coming out of all this corporate sponsorship money. So
positives to be found.
Be found. We got the Pop-Tart mascot.
Right. So we have a 12-2 Oregon team. The only 2 losses to Washington. We're going to get to the Huskies in a second, but it's always fascinating to me to look back and see, past seasons and decide where this season ranks. So we're looking at, and some of this isn't fair because back in the day you only played 11 games. You didn't have a conference championship game, but 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13th 10-win season for the Ducks. Only the 6th time the Ducks have won 12 or more. But there are the 2 losses. The only teams that have ever had 1 loss or less are 1, 2, I think 4. Well, okay, we count national championship games. If we count that loss, then there was a 13-2 2014 team, but their second loss was in the national title game. And then of course you have 2010 and 2012 had 1 loss and 0 loss. So clearly, regardless of how you spell it out, a top tier season for the Ducks, but no championship, no conference championship. So where do you rank this season?
Like a tier 2. Yeah, like if we're going in tiers, I give it a tier 2.
So how many are in your tier 1? Like are you saying obviously it's a top 10 season? I guess the question is this: Is this top 3 or 4 all time, or is this more like 7, 8, somewhere in there?
I mean, the number 1 season is definitely when they made the college football playoff, I would say.
Yeah, for me, that's number 1.
Yeah, I think so too, because they made the national championship game that year. So they had to win 1 extra game to get to the national championship. Right. So yeah, we'll put that number 1. We'll put it number 2 is when they made the national championship. They actually had to win 2. They had to win 2.
They had to win 2 actually to get to the national championship game. 2 more than the 2010 team, because in 2010 we didn't have the Pac-12 title game yet.
True. Okay, fair.
Let alone the playoff. So that team had to win 2 more. But anyway, so those two. I mean, you make the national title game. Those to me are 1 and 2. Like I think that's just
agreed.
And then after that, it's sort of what you value.
Yeah, that win over Wisconsin in the Rose Bowl was That was a good season.
Which one? 2011 or 2019? They did it twice.
2011.
Yeah, that was the 12-2 season, and one of the losses was that upset at home to USC. If they lost to LSU in Texas, so that was a good, like a quality loss.
Yeah.
So for me,
you keep going.
So someone I know who's a big Oregon supporter, a big fan, old school Duck. He reached out. I didn't talk to him in a while. He reached out to me the other day, and he told me he thought this was arguably the best team ever.
What?
And I was like, come on. Come on. They didn't win the championship. Yeah, I know, but blah, blah, blah. They just barely lost to Washington. I go, that's the criteria now? You barely lost to Washington? Then I kind of like gave him my little history lesson, and then he texted me later and said, you know what, you're right, now that I think about it. Sometimes people get caught in here and now. Recency bias is a thing. We all get that.
Obviously.
But for me, here's the seasons that are just flat out I put ahead of it. And the teams I put ahead of the season. 2001, they went 11-1. The one loss, that tough, close loss to Stanford. That team.
Stanford.
Throttled. Yeah, Stanford comes up a lot. That team with Joey and Harrington.
That was like the loss of my childhood. Like that one. I mean, I got really hit when I was a kid. Yeah, I got really hit. Like you got that Stanford loss. Yeah, I remember walking down the concourse after that loss or whatever, walking outside the stadium.
You were like 10.
And
No, you were.
Yes.
How old were you? 8 or 10?
I was 9.
Okay.
Yeah, I was 9. And I remember it was just dead quiet. I mean, it was like, however many thousand people can fit into Autzen at that point had just attended a funeral. It was dead quiet. And I remember just yelling, "I hate that dancing tree!" I was so upset. So between that and the Western Conference Finals against the Lakers, man, I got lessons early on in sad sportsdom. Anyways, but that was a great season. You are correct. That was a great season. Right. Thank you, Joey.
They won the conference and they won the Fiesta Bowl top 5 matchup. Tons of NFL players on that team, so that team's definitely ahead. Then 2010 national championship game team clearly ahead to me. And the 2011 is interesting because they had 12-2, same record. They won a Rose Bowl. Obviously, it's a better opponent, but the opponent isn't. It's not Oregon's fault. It had to play Liberty, and we're getting into a really strange era now, anyway, because the actual real team isn't playing in bowl games, whereas back then they did. Now the 11 team won the conference, and one of its losses was to LSU. They played LSU the first game of the season, as opposed to this Oregon team played Texas Tech. So at the very least, it's equal. But I got to give, at the very least, it's equal in terms of if they played. Although I'd pick 11. But in terms of the overall season and accomplishments, well, it's 11 because you won the conference and you won the Rose Bowl over a good opponent in Wisconsin. Again, not Oregon's fault, but to me, better all-around season. So right now we're at 2001, 2010, 2011. The 12-1 2012 team, now they lost to Stanford, and Stanford won the conference. But back then you had divisions, so Oregon couldn't get a second crack at Stanford. Whereas this year's Oregon team, based on that set of rules, would not have even had a second chance at Washington, and it would have ended 11-1, 12-1 with the bowl win. It would have been almost identical type season. But this team got another crack and then didn't get it done. I think that 2012 team beats Stanford the second time out, because I think that Oregon team just would have learned from that and been able to respond differently the second time around. But a lot of people thought Oregon was winning this time and they didn't. So who knows really? Yeah. But what's sad is that 12-1 team would have made the playoffs. Probably even as not a conference championship, when you look at the rankings and what they were, I think they finished 3rd or 4th in the country. So that to me is like, it's close. It's truly close. So I'm going to call that a tie just to try and give the 2023 season something. 2013, no. 2014 is number 1 for me. So the next on the list that we could put ahead of 2023 would be 2019. Now, again, 12-2, but that team played Auburn, a good Auburn team led by who? Bo Nix, freshman quarterback. That Auburn team, way better than Texas Tech for your non-conference opponent. And then that Oregon team beat Wisconsin in the Rose Bowl, a way better opponent than Liberty. And that team won the conference championship and did so as the underdog to Utah. Yeah. They were a big underdog in that game. I went in that game thinking that Utah was going to the best run defense in the country, was going to shut down the run game and get after Herbert and win that game. And Oregon rushed for 300 yards. I think Verdell had over 200 himself, right? So again, not this team's fault. They had to play Liberty, but still, all-around season. Now, who wins? I'm taking that team. Now, a lot of people talk about this year's defense, but that 2019 defense was pretty nasty as well. And you had Kayvon, Javon Holland, a lot of NFL dudes on that team. So I don't know. That would be close, but I'm going right there. So right now, I got this season 6th or 7th all time.
That seems fair to me. That seems absolutely fair. Right outside the top 5, in the top 10. Yeah. I'm not gonna argue with you on that.
They don't, because the other thing, they don't really have a marquee win. Like who's the big win? USC, Utah.
Yeah, no.
I mean, and Utah fell off and they were banged up. USC obviously ended up not being that good. So who'd you beat? You literally beat nobody. And it's funny. I see people. My man George Reiser, love him. Told Doug Homer, he's like, it's clear that the Oregon-Washington Pac-12 title game was basically the national championship game. they're clearly the second best team in the country. Oregon is. I'm like, gee, Monique, come on. Now all of a sudden, Oregon, who hasn't beaten anyone worth a damn this season, not necessarily their fault, is now better than Texas, better than Michigan, better than Bama, better than no. I'm not buying that at all. But anyway, definitely a great team in the history of the program. Certainly, no doubt about that. Their strength of this reference thing has a simple rating system that takes into account average point differential and strength of schedule. On that, this season ranks fifth on that measurement, just ahead of 2011 and ahead of 2019 and ahead of 2001. But the thing about 2001 that has to be taken into account is that back then they weren't running no huddle. They weren't running spread. It was more pro style, so it's a slower pace. And so you're not going to produce as many points, and you're not going to have a chance to run away from teams like you do today with sort of like a fast break offense. Sort of like comparing the era when they didn't shoot a lot of threes to when they shoot a lot of threes. Well, of course they score more points now. Every team, I sit there and watch these NBA games, and teams are combining for 83s, which puts me to sleep. Whereas back in the day, teams combined for like 10. So of course you can have a difference in scoring. Anyway, all right. Anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think we've pretty thoroughly got to the bottom of it.
Okay, so you take the lead on this one, Bo Nix. Bo Nix breaks the Mariota records. Does this put him ahead of the GOAT?
No.
Okay, end of discussion.
We both agree on that. I mean, I'm sorry. It's not just about the records. Like, yes, it is super, like, this is not discounting anything that Bo has done. Like, obviously very impressive what Bo has done this year. And the fact that he, has that touchdown record now by 3 touchdowns is awesome. That's pretty incredible, and also kind of incredible considering the fact that they didn't score a touchdown in the first quarter, so all of his touchdowns came in a quarter and a half, basically. Right. Like, that's insane to think about, because like I said, he got pulled. He did not, that third drive he went out on in the second half. That was a nice little parade for him. So he didn't throw a pass on that drive. And he only played 2 plays. And the only reason why he played 2 plays because first one, somebody got out and got a penalty. So anyways, super impressive what Bo has done, all that sort of stuff. Bo, but it's not just about where he stands statistically. Marcus went to a college football playoff national championship game. Until you do that, you will never be, until a quarterback wins a national championship for Oregon, you will never be considered the GOAT at Oregon above him. Because he is the one who led them there. So that's kind of just, that's very cut and dry for me. Like, you can have all the statistical stuff you want. Until you win more than him, we can't put you in that discussion. Agreed.
So I will say, statistically, right here in front of us, that Bo clearly statistically had the greatest passing season in Ducks history.
Yes.
77.4%. Marcus was at
statistically passing yards, season in the country.
4,500 to 4,554. Now Marcus had average yards per attempt. Still 45 touchdowns, only 3 picks, which is stupid. I thought 42 touchdowns with 4 picks was stupid. And that 4th pick came on one of the last plays of the national title game, like a desperation throw. 188 rating to 187. And Bo did all of that in 14 games compared to 15 for Marcus. So, yeah, you can say greatest passing season, regardless, breaking down opponents and things like that. But, here's the big separation point. Marcus that year rushed for 796 yards and 16 touchdowns. Right? So the total touchdowns then jumps up to 58, which again is stupid. whereas Bo rushed for 6. Now, the year before he rushed for 15, but a lot of those were 1-yard touchdowns. It was crazy. If I was a running back on that team last year, I'd have been pissed. Bo kept running it in 1 and 2 yard touchdowns, which to me are like, I don't know, any quarterback can do that. But regardless, he obviously he's a legit dual threat quarterback. He didn't run as much this past season, but regardless, greatest season ever, still by far Marcus, and still the GOAT, like you said. I mean, he won a conference title. He won a playoff game. They played Michigan State that year, a really good Michigan State team that was ranked top 10 when they played them versus, Oregon playing Texas Tech this year. Marcus's biggest wins was the conference championship game. And then there was some good conference games because that year the conference had 6 teams finish ranked in the top 25. I don't know what the final rankings were this year. Have you looked at those yet? But I sometimes have to remind people when people debate, greatest seasons ever, and some people bring up 2010. Well, 2010, only 2 teams in the conference finished ranked in the top 25, both top 10, Stanford and Oregon. But that 2014 season had 14 teams. So right now, after the bowl season, the Pac-12 is looking at who being ranked. Oregon State's going to fall out. Arizona should stay in. Washington, obviously, in Oregon. So 3. So that 2014 conference was far deeper and better. People were killing me early in the season talking about, oh my God, the Pac-12 is so deep, it's so amazing. There should be multiple teams in the playoffs. It's a shame there won't be enough playoff spots for 4 teams because this is like, come on, this was like 3 or 4 games in the season. You let the season play out. So anyway, for all those reasons, Mark is still the king, but damn, Bo saved the quarterback situation at Oregon. And I knew at the end of that, or when it was clear that they knew Ty Thompson wasn't ready his freshman year. There was no way Mario or anyone was going to put all their eggs in that basket coming into the next season. And so, it was clear they were going to go out and get a transfer. And it turned out being Lanning to do that. And he got a familiar face who he coached against and someone Dillingham had coached. And that guy resurrected his career here. And it may have just been 2 seasons, but definitely, one of the top quarterbacks in the history of the program. There's no doubt about that. And without him, I made this comment on Twitter and people freaked out. I said, without the transfer portal, which included getting him and paying and NIL, Oregon might have been 16-10. Because I think he's at least a 5-game war over 2 seasons, at least. Now they could have gotten someone else, but I don't think they would have gotten someone at this level. And we'll see what Gabriel does last year. But Bo Nix flying in here, it's akin to what Achilles Smith did when Masoli came in. Oregon's had and Vernon Adams got hurt, broke his fingers. And he got hurt in Alamo Bowl. But man, Vernon Adams lit the Pac-12 up for like a 7-game stretch. It was ridiculous. Oregon's done pretty well with transfers over the years, and it looks like that's going to be the norm from now on because you already have 2 transfers in the pipeline for the next 3 years at Oregon. But props to Bo Nix for a great season. Very impressive to watch.
Also, just a side note, very unfortunate that the Ducks somehow kind of got, in a weird way, jobbed and didn't get to play Arizona this year. Because at least they would have had, if they would have beat Arizona, at least they have something else. But I mean, all they have is UW now. It's just kind of weird. It's very weird how the season all turned out. I know. Very, very weird.
Very weird. Hey, what are you gonna do? 12-2 is a great season. Move forward. But
exactly.
But aside from the Ducks not getting into the playoffs, they definitely were a playoff caliber, whether they got in or not. And they definitely would have been in next year. This team would have been. The next worst thing that could possibly happen is playing out. You are a Duck fan, Brenna. How are you feeling about the fact that the Huskies are in the national championship game?
Okay, let's go a little bit deeper here. All right. Not only did I grow up a Duck fan, but then I went to Gonzaga. Back in the years when our friend Lorenzo Romar was too chicken to play us. Why? Why is that? Oh, that's because we beat them every time. Okay? He said, I'm done with this. I'm done getting smoked by Gonzaga. I'm not playing this series anymore. So, you've got somebody who grew up with a dad that literally has, I'm not joking. There are like two things I want to make sure I get when my parents unfortunately leave this earth. One of them is the foosball table, because I like that thing. And the number two thing is that we have a painting in our house of the pick, okay? We have a painting. So I don't think I can...
score. Kenny's gonna score.
Exactly. Okay? Like that's when people ask me how big of a Duck family I grew up in, I'm like, we have a painting of the pick. Who else has a painting of the pick in their house? Hello. Keep it classy, baby. I love it. And then I went to Gonzaga, like I said, where they refused to play us because they were too chicken. And then on top of it, I go back to Spokane, cover Gonzaga, and I cover WSU. And things did not go well. Well, you know what? WSU did beat UW once while I was there, but I was actually not at that game, which is, I went to the previous two. Maybe it was me. I went to the previous two, but I was not at that game because I was in Vegas covering Gonzaga playing Duke that night. So, anyways, what I am laying out for the fine people listening to our podcast is this. I was kind of born and bred to dislike them. Now, like, I think, especially in this business, everything fades. So do I dislike them as much as I disliked them as a kid? No. Okay? No. That's not where it's at. Or even as a 20-something. Like, no, it's not as strong. But do I have it? I have to find within my heart to root for Jim Harbaugh in Michigan on Monday. This is devastating. I texted somebody yesterday after Michigan won, and I said, you better not win tonight because then I'm going to have to root for Michigan? I mean, there really was no good options here, but Michigan, especially after this year?
You're innocent. Just kidding. You should see the look Brenna just gave me.
If you're just listening right now, you missed a classic Brenna. Woo. Excuse me?
That was a glare. Anyway.
So yeah. Anyways, this stinks. But I saw the point that you made on Talking Ducks last week about if UW wins, this is going to be awful on Twitter and just in every sort of facet of life that UW can hold over Ducks fans that they have a legit national championship. And I thought to myself, oh man, he's so right. He's so right. He wins. So there you go. You made a very salient point. I try to root for West Coast. I try to always root for West Coast in almost everything. But you are right. I cannot do it here. I cannot do it here.
Yeah. So what? I first got on Twitter in 2007. So 16 years. Damn.
Wow. And look at you.
That was in the early stages of the Ducks winning 12 in a row over Washington. And then Washington got that huge beatdown in 2016 and won the conference. And Washington won a conference again since, right? Besides this year?
They won it when they went to the college football playoff.
Right, that was at 16. But I think, haven't they won it again since then? Before this year? Is this their third? No, they haven't. Okay. Regardless, I'm trying to look it up as I talk.
I understand.
Oregon had a lot of reason to talk a lot of trash because they had that 4 and 6 years. They went to the national championship game. They had a Heisman. They won 12 in a row, right? And so, they won in 16 and 18. So they've won 3 in 8 years. Oregon's won 2. One's tainted. 2020 will always be tainted because they couldn't even play Washington because of COVID. But regardless. So there was a lot. Oregon had a lot going for it in terms of trashing on Washington for a long time. And Washington fans would always bring up 1991 because they split the national title with Miami. Another great example of why college football is stupid, because those two teams should have played. But I'll let that go. It's been 30-something years. I'll let it go. But if Washington were to rise up and like the Oregon in its fascination with recruiting, with fans, especially on online, and its fascination with recruiting and rankings and stuff, it's just been nauseating for me. Like, it's important, but it's just been, they just talk so much trash, and they talk all this crap about Mario's classes, and most of those kids end up in the portal. And it's not like they haven't produced success. Obviously they have, but it just becomes this thing with Oregon that the flock is hot and we got this ranked class and blah, blah. And here's Washington just been hanging out with its measly little 20-something ranked, 30-something ranked recruiting classes or whatever. And now they're in a position to win it all. And if they are able to win it all after everything Oregon has done to pour all of this money into facilities, into uniforms, into building the brand, into now with the NIL and all of these things, for Washington to rise from the ashes, they were 0-12, however many years ago that was, to rise from the ashes and win a national title, and do so by beating Oregon twice. Once when they were 10-point dogs in the conference title game, when everyone, including myself, thought Oregon was going to win based on common opponents and what had happened since the first time they played, would just be monumentally devastating. Because let me just say this right now, Oregon fan, you can't say jack to Washington other than if you beat them. Like, you can talk about that game, but you can't say anything program-wise for a long time until Oregon wins a national title. Like, period. Like, Washington will be able to hold that over. There's nothing you can say. 2024, Oregon wins 37-30 over Washington. You can talk that day. After that, you got to shut the hell up, because they can say national champion. I'm sorry, when did you win a national title? Oh, that's right. You lost 2. That's right. We have 2. But when did you lose? Plus, they've won 3 conference titles recently. So this you have to do. I don't want to advocate Tanya Harding-esque things, but you might want to hire a Galuli or 2 and send them over to Washington's practice and see if you can get. I'm kidding, of course, but it's
you might have that taken care of with Dylan Johnson, anyways. But continue.
Right. But
he did not look like he was going to be able to come back in a week last night, but we'll see.
Yeah, well, they'll get him out there somehow. Anyway, so I just this is bad. This is a bad development. So pull from Michigan, do everything you can to send good vibes Harbaugh's way, and hope they win this.
Sending goodbye, good vibes, Jim Harbaugh's way.
Hey,
that is where we're at. That is where Oregon is at as a fan base.
And Oregon will deserve every ounce of it, because Oregon fans talk. They talk a lot, and there's nothing wrong with that. And talking's fine, but you talk the talk, you gotta walk the walk. And if things go the wrong way, you gotta eat it. And
all fan bases talk a lot. So
it's not. This isn't. I mean, Washington's fan base is ridiculous. I mean, so this isn't just on Oregon, but it's just, this is like the worst thing that can happen.
Each fan base has its own interesting subplot, but they all are annoying in slightly different ways. Yes. And I'm even saying that about the Gonzaga fan base. My alma mater's fan base drives me absolutely bananas at times. But it's different. But it's a different kind of bananas than the Ducks or the Huskies or Wazoo. It's totally everybody. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Someday I'll go on that rant. Anyways. Yeah.
Go ahead.
You can't.
You want to add anything else to that?
No. I think you summed that up.
Anything else?
Very well. It's they're you have no rebuttals for quite some time until you win one. So in fact, you have no rebuttals probably ever until you win one. So
let's yeah.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay.
What was that? 37 seconds. Okay, 37 minutes. All right. All right, let's go Oregon State real quick.
Yeah.
Lost 40-8 to Notre Dame. Expected another situation where maybe a matchup should have been shifted and adjusted because one team was clearly decimated by the loss of their coach and their top two quarterbacks. But you know, not all is bad. They got Keith Hayward back in the fold. He coached at Oregon as a great recruiter, and then he went to Nevada as DC. No, UNLV as DC with Arroyo, and then to the NFL with the Raiders. And now he's back with the Beavers, where he played as defensive coordinator. So that was a good get, especially on the recruiting trail. And they got another transfer quarterback in. So you know, there's some bright spots there, and then of course they got a lot of money to play with, right? So how do you sort of look at things from Oregon State's perspective after the expected blowout loss?
Hilarious that the Sun Bowl was sold out, by the way. Hilarious. But it was sold out. And then somebody explained to me that there's a lot of Notre Dame fans because there's a lot of obviously like Mexican Catholic people in El Paso. And then I was like, oh, it makes sense. Okay, now I understand. Mm-hmm. So there you go. But yeah, that game was sold out. Yeah, I mean, you know, they've kind of got like an interesting stable of quarterbacks for next year. I think the guy from Florida, I think, is visiting. I think I saw that last night that there's a guy from Florida who's visiting as well. So if they would get him, that would be their third transfer quarterback to come in. But you know, as much as we appreciate Ben Gulbranson's efforts, I think this game made it clear that he probably is not the one next year. So, yeah, they're just in a really interesting transition spot right now. You know, you can't really judge anything on that game. It is what it is. And yeah, I mean, you know, we flush it. Just can we forget it ever happened? Like, that's how I feel. And there's so many reasons why that game is like just don't even think about it. I mean, you know, the guy who is going to be the coach wasn't coaching. You've got a guy playing quarterback who is pretty obviously not going to be the quarterback next year. You've got so many opt-outs, so many guys in the portal. They did just lose another guy to the portal yesterday, Silas Bolden. So that's sad for them. That's their leading receiver who's gone. I'm not surprised. He's a pretty good kick returner. He had that crazy punt return against UC Davis this year. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. That one where he like traversed the whole field to get to the end zone. It was crazy. So yeah, he's gone. So that's disappointing for them. But you know, I was kind of shocked he hung on until the bowl game, honestly. So shout out to him for that. Yeah, there's just a lot of things to sort through right now before we kind of have a full picture, a full picture of the puzzle, I guess you could say. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I think the number one thing is to not put a lot of stock in that game because
it's the same as the reverse effect when they blew out Florida last year and Florida was a complete mess.
Yes.
You know, it's like, but for Oregon State, that's still a big win because it's Florida and you got a big win over Florida, so you take it. But now this time you're going in under man against a much better Notre Dame team, and it just is what it is. But a lot of guys got experience, and you know that's always good. And we talked about Giovanni McCoy coming over from Idaho, quarterback, and then they added is it Gabari Johnson?
Yeah, Gabari Johnson from Mizzou.
So there's some competition there at quarterback. Two experienced guys. So you at least will have some stability there in terms of maybe you don't have a marquee superstar, but you're going to have a good quarterback situation.
Gabari isn't exactly experienced, but...
He isn't?
No, he didn't play at all for Mizzou this year.
Oh, never mind. I thought he played. So, yeah. But you have experience with McCoy, who's been a
yeah, and you've got a guy that was, I mean, he was offered by Oregon out of high school. So, you know, you've got a guy that had a lot of high level offers coming out of HS. So you do have that at the very least. Yeah.
So anyway, yes, you're right.
Gabari.
Oh, he's from Tacoma. Interesting. Yeah,
Yes.
3-star recruit. He was this 4-star coming out? I don't know. Anyway, he gives you a good young quarterback to play behind.
Exactly.
Yeah, the kid from Idaho. So that's a good situation to have moving forward. And you're gonna play an easier schedule. To me, if they can just get above 500 next year, and be bowl eligible, I think that would be huge for the reset. And I think that's definitely possible for them to pull off.
Yeah. Yeah, so. I think so too. Yeah.
All right, real quick before we go, you been paying attention to the Blazers at all?
Yeah. I've been paying attention.
No, you haven't. You don't look. You turn away because you can. It's okay. I won't judge you.
No, I pay attention.
I turn away sometimes when I'm watching at home.
I mean, was I exactly attentive last night while UW was playing Texas? No.
Right? How hard was that? That was so hard for me to pay attention to the Blazers while that game was going on.
Oh, yeah, I was it was one of those things where I looked up at the end of the first quarter. I was like, oh, they're ahead. And then I looked up at halftime and I went, all right, we're regressing to the mean. And then we got done with the third quarter and I said, all right, thank you for making my night super easy. I can run a 20-second thing where I say right off the top, they lost by 20. Here's the one good play that came like 2 minutes into the first quarter with Jeremy Grant just sky high, and we'll see y'all later. It made a very easy highlight for me last night, which was nice because yesterday was like really busy for me. So I appreciated the Blazers losing the way they did. Made it so easy for me to just skate on past that one. Like I said, 20 seconds and we out. See ya. We got other things to talk about today. So yeah, but this is, when your leading scorer has 17 points, it's a rough situation.
It was bad. But that leading scorer was Scoot Henderson, who has been on fire.
He's doing great.
He is. Corner. In the last 4 games,
yay, Scoot.
He had 17 and 11 against Sac in a win. He had 25 and 4, though he didn't play that well against that San Antonio game. 12 points came in the fourth quarter long after the game was over. But still, he had a career high 25. Came back with 22 and 11 and 7 as a starter with Ant out being sick. And that was in a win over San Antonio. And then he started against a good team in Phoenix and went 17 to 6. Didn't shoot all that well. 7 of 18. Did have 5 turnovers. Not good. But still, he's showing some signs.
Some signs of life.
You impressed?
Yeah. I mean, you have to keep your expectations at a certain level for a rookie point guard. So
who's 19?
It makes sense that he struggled at the beginning, and I think the decision to bring him off the bench was and has been really beneficial for him. And now we're starting to kind of reap the rewards of him being able to take a few minutes, assess where the game is at, come in and make things happen. That game against San Antonio, man, it wasn't his scoring. It was his assists that were just like, oh.
Right? He had 6 in one quarter. A big quarter, second quarter. Yeah.
I was like, oh, I see you, buddy.
Setting the table. And here's the killer thing. I tweeted about this the other day. Heading into the Suns game, over his last 10 games, prior 10 games before the Suns game, 43% on threes.
Oh.
Prior to that, he shot 18% in the first 12 games, whatever it was. So all of a sudden, dude's banging threes. He was 6 of 12 on threes in the 2 games against the Spurs.
Yeah.
So, is that how long is that going to last? Of course, he's going to have some, off nights coming up. But the fact of the matter is, over that stretch, you got to respect his 3-point shooting.
Yeah.
Which is going to open everything up for him. So, great signs from him. Not winning signs yet. He's got a long way to go. But, man, got 17 and 11 off the bench against Sacramento. That's a good Sacramento team.
All I got to say is we will take our wins, even if they are not literal wins, where we get them over this road trip, because this is going to be a rough 13-day stretch, and there ain't no other way to cut it, okay? There are going to be L's. So we will find silver linings in the L's, because there's just no other way about this. Like, it's not going to be pretty, okay? This is not going to be pretty with this team, especially with, how the roster looks right now. And it's a lot of guys in and out and blah, 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 blah. Like, yeah, it's going to be
yeah.
It's not, I just say a prayer that all the people on the 13-day road trip make it back in one piece, because that sounds miserable.
Yeah, they start with the loss at Phoenix. They go to Dallas for 2. I'm actually leaving tomorrow for Dallas. I'll be there for those. And then they go to New York for Brooklyn and New York. I'll be there for those 2. Then they go to OKC in Minnesota. I'm not going to those 2. Coming home after New York. But yeah, I don't. There's no obvious win on this trip. They could easily lose all 7. It's the NBA, and things happen, and they get Ant and Ayton back. I think they could steal one. Maybe Brooklyn. Maybe even the Knicks. I don't see Minnesota happening. I don't see OKC happening. That's just a bad matchup for the Blazers. Has been for a while. If all those guys return, maybe they still win in Dallas. And I'm not saying they steal all 3 of these possible steals. I'm saying maybe that's where they get the 1.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're going to go over 7, but we'll see. But yeah, it's going to be bad. But that's okay. Like you said, we don't care. We want to see Sharp come back, get off the minutes restriction, regain his form. We want to see Ayton get back healthy. I just want to see this team healthy and see what they can do. It's just like whenever they get guys back, then other guys go out. It's just, anyway.
It's a domino effect, man.
It's driving me nuts. All right. Well, that was good. Good work.
We did it. And we've got to give our podcasting software a thumbs up as well, because what the people at home don't know is that we have dealt with significant issues over the last month or so with this thing cutting out all over the place and us having to get back in and hop back in. And today, Riverside Studio, we needed you to be perfect. And our internet connection, we needed you to be perfect, and you did it. So to Comcast and Riverside, you were our real MVPs today. Thank you very much. We did it. I can't believe it, against all odds. Way to go, Aaron. You know it.
Yeah, hey, I hear you. And I think most of the problems a couple podcasts ago was my internet, because I had to go get a new modem. But that's another story. Anyway, thanks for listening to the Oregonian Sports Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to our subtext feature. Just text JOIN to 503-386-0095. You always see the link. Click the link and start a 14-day trial. Text to myself and Bill Orm and James Crepia and Nick Dashel and others. All right, Brenna, you have a good week. I'm going to hit the road. I'm trying not to get into too much trouble in New York. Who am I kidding? I won't leave my hotel room unless I'm at the game. But anyway. But we'll touch base when I get back from my trip. All right?
All right.
Talk to you later.